Hello there, Star Wars fans. Welcome to the Hyperspace Database. I'm your Mandalorian, Jonesy here, bringing you today's topic, the Ssi-Ruuk species. The Ssi-Ruuk were a saurian species that originated from the planet Luek, which was on the fringes of the known galaxy. They were a powerful physical race, walking on their strong hind legs and had long, powerful tails that were nearly as strong as their powerful clawed arms. While they were technically reptilian, the Ssi-Ruuk were actually warm-blooded, and they were carnivorous. Adult Ssi-Ruuvi, which was the singular form of Ssi-Ruuk, reached an average height of around 7 feet, and they weighed close to 750 pounds when fully grown. Their fearsome strength was often compared to that of an adult Wookiee, which was considerable. Another similarity to the mighty Wookiees is that they were surprisingly graceful and quick for creatures of their size and weight, which often took their enemies by surprise when in battle. A distinguishing feature of the Ssi-Ruuk was their forked scent tongues, which came out of their long nostrils. This heightened sense of smell allowed the Ssi-Ruuk to have a kind of lie detector function, as they could smell changes in another being's scent due to stress. Although they did not like the scent of others, and thought it was distasteful compared to their own reptilian scent. The Ssi-Ruuk species spoke in a language called ssi-ruuvi, which could not be reproduced by humans, as the aliens possessed special organs that allowed them to communicate through melodic clicks and whistles. It was often compared to the sound of a flute, which led to the Ssi-Ruuk being nicknamed fluties by other beings, though some Ssi-Ruuk were known to speak Basic as well, though this was fairly rare. The skin of a Ssi-Ruuvi was so thick that it was nearly blaster resistant, though if hit repeatedly and at close range, the Ssi-Ruuvi would experience some significant burns from the blaster bolts. One of the most easily distinguishable features of the Ssi-Ruuk were their shining scales, which covered the alien's entire body. These reflective scales ranged in color, as there were more than 7 different colors that signified the status of each Ssi-Ruuk. They were divided into different ranks called castes, each with their own particular function which denoted their place in their society and religion. The brown Ssi-Ruuk were the lowest of the clans, and were often considered outcasts as a result of intermarried castes, which was strictly forbidden. In fact, many brown Ssi-Ruuk were destroyed at birth so they would not contaminate the other races. These creatures performed the grunt work of the Ssi-Ruuk society, and were often treated as slaves to the other clans. Most of these Ssi-Ruuk were thought to be the ancestors of the Puek species, which were the actual slaves. These Pueks were smaller and considered less intelligent than their larger counterparts, and were most often the subject of much abuse. The next class of Ssi-Ruuk were the Black-Scaled clan, which were extremely rare. They were most often assigned to assassination and infiltration missions. The Green Scales were the largest clan of the Ssi-Ruuk, and were the basic working class. Not much else is known about them. The Red Scale clan was the military caste, and these reptiles were far stronger and more broad in physical stature than many of the other clans. The Yellow Ssi-Ruuk were the scientists and leaders of technological advancement, while the Gold Ssi-Ruuk were the leaders in the religious sector, which was extremely important to the Ssi-Ruuk as a whole. The highest clan of the Ssi-Ruuk was the Blue-Scaled clan, which was called the Noble Caste, and these were the leaders and politicians of the species. They held the most power, and made all the important decisions for everyone. The Ssi-Ruuk were fairly xenophobic creatures, and they viewed all other races and their beliefs as inferior to their own. The Ssi-Ruuk rarely ventured outside of their home star cluster, which was located in the unknown regions of space, because they believed that if they were to die outside one of their own consecrated worlds, their souls would wander the universe and not reach the Ssi-Ruuk afterlife, though they could consecrate a conquered planet with a complex ceremony that would then give that world a new Ssi-Ruuk name. The xenophobia of the Ssi-Ruuk led to them enslaving many technologically and physically weaker species, like the Puek, and they would then experiment on them with their strange entechment technology. Entechment took a being's life force and used it to power a machine, basically transferring the soul of the Ssi-Ruuk slaves and captives into their starfighters and droids. The Ssi-Ruuk claimed that the process was painless, yet every being who was subjected to it screamed in agony when they were enteched. While this would power a machine for a while, the energy would eventually run out, and any force-sensitive being would feel the agony of a soul trapped in machines like this. This was how much of the Ssi-Ruuk military expanded their ranks, as they would invade primitive worlds with enteched battle droids and war machines, and then use the captives of the planet to grow their droid armies and expand their reach in the galaxy. The Ssi-Ruuk species was first introduced in the Legends novel The Truce at Bakura, which takes place right after the destruction of the second Death Star at Endor. The Rebel Alliance intercepts a call from a desperate remote Imperial outpost, which is being overrun by strange alien invaders. Princess Leia sees an opportunity for a diplomatic win for the rebels, so they rush to the small garrison to repel the aliens. These Ssi-Ruuk had made a secret deal with Emperor Palpatine many years prior, to exchange their entechment technology for more worlds to subjugate. Though when the Emperor died, that deal went out the window, and the aliens tried to expand their territory anyway. When the rebels arrive at Bakura, they temporarily team up with the Imperial forces to fight against the aliens, and it is here that they are first introduced to Dev Sibwara. Dev was a human captive that was raised and brainwashed by the Ssi-Ruuk. His mother was a failed Padawan of the Jedi Order, and when she left, she avoided Order 66. As Dev grew older, he found that he could control the Force, and this led to him being taken by the Ssi-Ruuk when his parents were killed in the invasion of their colony. Dev would use the Force to calm captives of the Ssi-Ruuk, making them more compliant when they were enteched, which the Ssi-Ruuk claimed was a great honor for any non-Ssi-Ruuk. He could also sense humans from a distance, and this life web force ability allowed for the Ssi-Ruuk to learn that humans were the dominant species in the galaxy. Dev would later meet Luke Skywalker, and through several interactions, the Jedi Knight would free the boy from his hypnotic indoctrination, and the rebels would drive back the aliens. The Ssi-Ruuk threat was not eliminated, but the aliens were discouraged from expanding into known space for some time. They would eventually try and conquer Bakura again some 20 years later, although this attempt also failed due to an insurrection by the slave Pueks, who turned on their oppressive masters and led a successful revolt, upending the highest castes and establishing a military dictatorship from the former red-scaled soldier caste. The Ssi-Ruuk attempted to expand into other regions of space as well, and succeeded in capturing several minor Chiss-occupied worlds. Though the retaliation for this action was swift and overwhelming, as the Chiss laid waste to the Ssi-Ruuvi capital, Luek. With the Ssi-Ruuvi Imperium in ruins, it was unknown what happened to them when the Yuuzhan Vong invaded in 28 ABY, but it was likely that their worlds were invaded like most of the known galaxy. And when the Vong were eventually defeated, the Ssi-Ruuvi Imperium was in no state to even think about expansion again. The Ssi-Ruuk overall were a powerful race of beings physically, and with their entechment technology, they were a fearsome force to encounter on the battlefield. One would hope that you would win against them in battle, or die trying, because to be captured and enteched by them would be a fate worse than death. Would you like to know more about great Star Wars topics like this? Be sure to check out my channel and my other videos, hit those like and subscribe buttons, and the bell to never miss an episode that I publish. Be sure to chat with me in the comments too, because I really want to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.